headlines. North Korea lashes out at a UN resolution on its human rights record and vows to intensify its nuclear deterrence. Korea's balance sheet in terms of asset investments as of September makes it in the black for the first time since data has been collected. The Korean won's fall and an increase in Korean investment overseas led the surplus. And bracing for even more snow, Buffalo, New York may get another 3 feet, and that makes a year's worth of snow for the region in just 3 days. Hello and welcome to ARIRANG News, coming to you live from Seoul. I am Kang Tae-ri. North Korea has lashed out against the passage of a UN draft resolution which calls for the regime to be held responsible for violating human rights. It's coming out strong. It says it's totally rejecting a UN committee's decision and is going to strengthen its nuclear deterrence. Our Lee Ji-yoon has our top story.
North Korea is angry and is now threatening to conduct more nuclear tests. On Thursday, Pyongyang's foreign ministry issued a statement strongly rejecting a United Nations draft resolution that refers North Korea to the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. Calling it a U.S.-led attempt to overthrow the North Korean regime, the ministry said it will no longer refrain from conducting nuclear tests. And it looks like Pyongyang is getting ready to back up its words with action. Satellite imagery taken this month suggests that the North might actually be preparing to reprocess nuclear fuel into weapons with bombing capabilities. Analysis done by the U.S. Research Institute 38 North says the plutonium production reactor at the North's Yongbyon nuclear facility has been shut down for 10 weeks. As to why the reactor was shut down for longer than it needs to be, the institute says that the North seems to be replacing spent fuel rods and preparing to reprocess them. The imagery also shows steam coming from a cooling tower that's consistent with maintenance, testing, and other activities that take place before operations begin. Analysts point out, however, that Pyongyang has gone down this path before. Its nuclear reactors were shut down in 2007 under a disarmament agreement, but last year, North Korea restarted them. Lee Ji-yoon, ARIRANG News.
Local police in Paris are looking for a North Korean student who has been reported as missing for more than 2 weeks now. This young man is believed to be the son of an aide to Chang Song-taek, who was purged by Kim Jong-un last year. Kwon So-ah has the details.
The North Korean man, who had been studying in Paris for around 3 years, has been missing for more than 2 weeks now. French authorities are taking the case very seriously, considering the male student's close family links to Chang Song-taek, the uncle of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who was purged and swiftly executed late last year. There's speculation the student, only identified by his family name Han, could be on the run from North Korean agents who want to forcefully repatriate him to the north.
We don't know the whereabouts of the student. We are currently assessing how credible this case is.
Han had been studying at an architecture college in the French capital with 9 other elite students from Pyongyang's prestigious Kim Il-sung University. Given that Han is the son of a reportedly purged aide of Chang Song-taek, there are rumors the North Korean regime is still not done with getting rid of Chang's inner circle and their associates. If the assumptions are found to be true, the case could spark a huge diplomatic row between France and North Korea, especially in the wake of the EU-drafted UN resolution that calls for the North Korean leadership to be brought before the International Criminal Court. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
South Korea continues to mull over the request of a former First Lady to visit North Korea. An official at Seoul's Unification Ministry says they're considering 2 key factors in the decision. 1, the timing of Lee Hee-ho's trip, and 2, who she plans to meet during her stay. There are concerns that Pyongyang may use her trip for political purposes ahead of the 3-year anniversary of former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il's death in December. In a meeting meeting with President Park Geun-hye last month, the former First Lady expressed a desire to visit Pyongyang so she could donate hand-knitted hats for North Korean children. Officials from the two sides will meet in Kaesong on Friday to discuss the details of her possible trip. And staying with the North Korean city of Kaesong, that's where the Inter-Korean Factory Complex is located, and those entering the complex will now be monitored for signs of the Ebola virus. Officials from South Korea's Unification and Health Ministries lent 3 thermal scanners for North Korean authorities to use at this complex. The scanners cost more than $13,000 each, but were provided to North Korea free of charge. This comes upon Pyongyang's request to screen South Korean workers entering Kaesong over fears of Ebola last month. A big step forward in South Korea's tank building capability. A crucial part of the K2 tanks can now be produced with a 100% homegrown technology. And the military says that this will help to close its numerical shortfall against North Korea. Kim Hyun-bin tells us more.
The last batch of 100 K2 Black Panther tanks, installed with a combination of a German-made engine and transmission systems, were put into service this year. The combinations are often referred to as power packs. South Korea started developing its own power packs in 2005, but the military knocked them back as they weren't deemed powerful or reliable enough. That is until now. Nearly a decade after development began, Korean power packs are now being fitted to the South Korean military's K2 tanks. The power packs enabled the tank to go from 0 to 32 kilometers an hour in just 8.7 seconds. Officials say that makes them fast enough to evade enemy anti-tank missiles.
The next batch of K2 tanks will fit future battlefield environments as they have enhanced mobility, firepower, and defense features.
North Korea has a sizable advantage over South Korea when it comes to the number of tanks it has, but most are believed to be antiquated. The North Korean military has 3,500 tanks at its disposal. The South just 2,400. Seoul plans to reduce the numerical gap by dispatching these latest tanks.
K2 tanks are far more advanced than the previous K1, so when they are fully deployed, South Korea will have the North Korean military on its toes.
The South Korean military says K2 Black Panther tanks will be in service by 2017. Officials hope to also sell the K2 to overseas buyers in the coming years. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
With deflation woes mounting here in Korea, local research institutions continue to lower Korea's economic growth forecast for this year and next. They say inflation will continue to stay in the 1% range next year, lower than the government's outlook of 2%. Song Ji-sun has more.
Slow growth and low inflation are making it hard for Seoul to reach its growth forecast this year. Korea's economic recovery has lost momentum since April's deadly ferry disaster, which dented domestic sentiment, and it appears the trend may continue well into next year. In July, Seoul slashed its growth forecast for this year from 4.1 to 3.7%. But that's still higher than the market median, which stands at 3.5%, according to financial data released Thursday. It's the same story for next year's growth outlook. While the Korean economy is expected to grow at a relatively faster rate compared to this year, the Korean government stands alone with a forecast of 4%, with others expecting the figure to fall in the 3% range. The inflation forecast for next year from private institutions rests in the 1% range, nearly a percentage point below the government's outlook. That suggests the inflation will hover in the 1% range for the third consecutive year. Slowing domestic demand coupled with falling oil prices will only compound the issue, which may sound like a good news for consumers, but not in the long run.
Once prices continue to fall, both consumption and investments shrink on expectations they will fall even more, leading to further deflation. To avoid such a recession, the government must facilitate the domestic economy in a way that boosts both growth and prices.
A weak Japanese yen, slowing growth in China, as well as an end to U.S. quantitative easing are also casting a shadow on the Korean economy as downside risks for the coming year. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
Korea's balance sheet in terms of asset investments as of September has made it in the black for the first time since data was first collected back in 1994. Our Hwang Jae explains what led to the surplus and what it implies for the country.
New figures show Korean banks are now less vulnerable to external shocks. That's because the country's assets overseas outpaced the debt it owes to foreigners for the first time as of the end of September. The Bank of Korea says the amount of international assets stood at $1.05 trillion compared to $1.02 trillion of foreign debt. The central bank adds that the assets and debt also includes investments in stocks.
It's not like companies are in debt if an investor buys their shares, but it means foreigners have that much of a stake in Korea. So the figure reflects a broader picture of Korea's indebtedness.
The surplus in net foreign assets comes on the back of a weak Korean won against the greenback that fell over 3% as of the end of September from 3 months ago. Although the actual amount of foreign investment in Korea remains unchanged, the amount, when converted into U.S. dollars, drops as the won tumbles. But it's also the increased amount of Korean investments overseas that led the surplus.
In the past, Korea was concerned about foreign debt that also had a massive impact on foreign exchange rates. That also prompted worries over financial crises. But because it now has more assets overseas, the focus should be on how to manage the assets efficiently.
Analysts add that Korea's overseas investments are likely to continue on this upward trend as the country posted a current account surplus for the 31st straight month in September. Hwang Jae, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geun-hye has asked the ruling party leadership to swiftly pass bills aimed at boosting the domestic economy. This includes ratifying free trade agreements with Australia, Canada, China, and New Zealand. The president also talked about what was discussed at the G20 summit in Brisbane. She said Korea's economic innovation plan was praised and added that political support and cooperation is crucial for revitalizing the economy and improving people's livelihoods. Also up for discussion was a bill on reforming the public employee pension system and next year's budget. The ruling party floor leader, in response, vowed to make sure the livelihood-related and budget bills pass Parliament before the deadline on December 2nd. In about 3 weeks' time, leaders from 10 ASEAN countries will be here in Korea for a special meeting with President Park Geun-hye. The event is held to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Korea's relations with ASEAN. Hwang Sung-hee tells us more.
The 2014 ASEAN ROK Commemorative Summit will kick off in Busan on December 11th. The two-day meeting invites leaders from 10 Association of Southeast Asian Nations member countries, like Myanmar and the Philippines. Up for discussion are ways to expand cooperation between Korea and the ASEAN countries, as well as global issues such as climate change and disaster relief measures. Since establishing diplomatic ties in 1989, ASEAN has become Korea's second-largest trade partner and investment destination. The region is also one of the most popular vacation hotspots, with over 4 million Koreans visiting the bloc every year. The commemorative summit is expected to further bolster the relationship.
Last year, President Park Geun-hye proposed a vision for partnership for trust and happiness in defining Korea-ASEAN relations for the future. The commemorative summit will present a comprehensive blueprint to realize this goal and will be an opportunity to celebrate 25 years of friendship between Korea and ASEAN.
The leaders will engage in bilateral meetings and enjoy a welcoming dinner on the first day of the event. The ASEAN ROK Commemorative Summit will take place on the second day, followed by a joint press conference. 황상희, 아리랑 뉴스.
The thought of going to prison is scary, to say the least, to most of us, if not all. But if it's a simulated prison cell, it might be less intimidating. Our Park Ji-won says there are, in fact, many people who voluntarily lock themselves up. Take a look.
People from all corners of the country arrive at this center in the county of Hongcheon, about 2 hours to the east of Seoul, for a couple of days of rest and relaxation. They change their clothes and turn in their personal belongings, including their mobile phones. Participants learn how to relax their bodies and meditate at a mountain. However, that's not all. This program is called Prison Inside Me, and there's a reason.
The most special feature of the program is that participants spend the night in this prison cell alone. In this setting, totally disconnected from the outside world, people can access their deepest state of mind and relieve stress while reflecting on their own lives in peace and quiet.
The center offers dozens of rooms that resemble prison cells, where people willingly lock themselves up to ponder their lives without distractions or interruptions. Since the center opened last year, several hundred people have stayed here.
I feel more somber, as all the distracting thoughts inside me disappear, as I empty my mind.
But why prison?
I first came up with the idea when I was working as a prosecutor. I was totally exhausted and wanted to spend some time alone in prison to rearrange my life.
It's that everyone has their own prison inside them and that they live under its influences. We hope this program gives people time to reflect about the restraints they live under and how to free themselves from them.
For those seeking to regain a balance in life again, a couple of days outside of their ordinary lives can provide a restart button for their weary minds and bodies. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
A massive blizzard has hit the U.S. state of New York, killing at least 7 people so far in the wake of freezing winds and heavy snow. And Paul Lee is joining us from the News Center to tell us more. It's been only the 3rd week of November, and already we're seeing a deadly snowstorm affecting the country.
Right, that blast of frigid air, according to the National Weather Service, has plunged all the contiguous states down to sub-freezing temperatures. But the brunt of the storm is bearing down near Buffalo, where residents there are bracing themselves for a year's worth of snow in just the next 3 days. Our Connie Lee has more.
New York is bracing for more snow as residents are still recovering from this week's deadly blizzard. At least 7 people were killed from being buried in the snow, traffic accidents, or heart problems. As some residents start to dig themselves out from the massive snowbanks, New York's governor is urging residents to stay indoors.
When we say stay home, really stay home. Going out on the roads is dangerous. It's unnecessary. You're not going to get anywhere. You will get stuck, and then you will further complicate the situation.
More than 100 National Guard members have been deployed to help clear the roads and remove abandoned vehicles. Dozens of cars were stranded all around the state on Wednesday, with some passengers being stuck for nearly 30 hours before being rescued. Buffalo, New York State's second most populous city, was hardest hit with about 1.5 meters of snow. The National Weather Service predicts that some areas could break single-day records for snowfall. This early cold blast of winter has actually affected much of the country. Officials say all 50 U.S. states had areas that hit the freezing point on Tuesday, and the southern and northeast regions are expecting more record-breaking cold temperatures in the coming days. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And turning now to China, the capital city Beijing has been hit by a new wave of heavy smog following the APEC summit there last week. Air pollution has been a chronic problem for Beijing for quite some time. What's causing this sudden drop in air quality?
Well, ironically, the main cause is the city's government's anti-pollution measures that were put in place to ensure clear blue skies when the group of Asia-Pacific leaders had gathered in Beijing. Now that the summit is over, those control measures have been lifted, reopening hundreds of factories and resuming traffic on major roads, which means a lot more greenhouse gases filling the air. Local weather forecasters issued an alert on Wednesday as pollution levels reached what authorities classified as hazardous, advising residents to take protective measures and stay indoors. The air quality index published by the U.S. Embassy in Beijing states that the most noxious form of air pollutants in the city hovered around 300, which the World Health Organization describes as a serious health hazard.
I feel it's not very convenient for us to commute. We have to wear face masks when we go out because of the air pollution. It's inconvenient for people who wear glasses if they use face masks. Besides, air pollution has easily caused many of my colleagues to develop coughs and colds. Respiratory diseases are also increasing.
An official report published earlier this year by the Chinese government said the severe pollution in Beijing has made the metropolitan city barely suitable for living. This despite numerous measures aimed at improving air quality in recent years.
Barely suitable for living. That's not good for a capital city there. Now let's move on to Hong Kong, Paul. Protesters in the Chinese-controlled territory are facing their latest crisis in their fight for fully free elections as morale is hitting an all-time low. We are in the 54th day of this pro-democracy movement. What's the general sentiment on the streets?
Well, many of the student-led demonstrators who have been camping out on the streets for weeks now say severe fatigue is setting in and morale is on a sharp decline. All this as public support for the movement is waning. According to a latest poll released by the University of Hong Kong, nearly 83% of the some 500 people surveyed said the protesters should stop their occupation. Many demonstrators in the Mong Kok area held talks Thursday on whether or not to move forward with escalating the protest action in order to put further pressure on the government.
Morale has been greatly affected. It's not just because of the police coming to clear the protest site or the injunction. It's about what happened in Admiralty a couple of nights ago. People feel if they take action, they may be betrayed by other protesters.
Public sentiment over the civic action fell through after a small group of mass protesters attempted to break into the Legislative Council building early Wednesday. The move has received widespread condemnation, including from pro-democracy legislators, as well as Occupy Central groups.
And finally, heading back to the U.S., the Los Angeles Auto Show is set to kick off this weekend with the world's largest car makers ready to unveil their latest models. What's the big trend for this year?
Well, the main focus this year, according to inside sources, is a return to fast luxury vehicles. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's going to be affordable greener cars, which will offer consumers better gas mileage than ever before. Almost every major auto manufacturer will have something to offer, with more than 30 new models making their world debut at the LA Convention Center. Among those is Toyota's luxury division Lexus, which has already revealed the LF-C2 convertible concept car. Fellow German automakers BMW and Porsche also were busy, with BMW set to launch its first performance hybrid sports car.
You look at the way the cars are produced. We source the carbon fiber using wind power, hydroelectric power. The cars are built using wind power. The materials inside are all recyclable. So it's a broader sustainability message, and I think that's where the future is going anyhow. I mean, the gas prices are ebb and flow like everything else economically.
The 2014 Los Angeles Auto Show will officially open its doors to the public on Friday and run through November 30th, in what many market watchers say represents a major sign of recovery for the auto industry. Charity?
All right. Thank you so much, Paul, for those stories. And we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours.
Hello and happy Thursday. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather forecast. It was a warm autumn day here in Korea with daytime highs reaching 14 degrees. However, temperatures will drop as the night progresses. The central regions will gradually be at the edge of a high pressure front from the West Sea, which will lead to cloudy skies in those areas. So as a result, about 5 millimeters of precipitation may fall in parts of the central regions. Other than that, tomorrow's morning lows and daytime highs may jump a couple of degrees compared to today. Looking ahead, conditions over the weekend are shaping up to be bright and warm, perfect for outdoor activities. On to Friday's readings. Seoul reaches 14, Gwangju hits 16, Busan 18. On to other regions. Daejeon and Dokdo hit 15, Mount Kumgang makes it to 5. Those are the updates I have for you now. I'll be back with more after 10.
Thank you so much, Pyongyang, and that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.